Oh, the first page in your notebook, when you guys turn, is your INSCAS reference sheet. You guys will be allowed to use this sheet on the quizzes, on the tests, on your INSCAS test that we take in April. This will be able to be used, and we will reference this paper all the time. So do not lose it. Make sure you bring your notebook with you every single day so you can reference it. Is that clear? Okay, we are going to start today with area of squares and rectangles, which I'm thinking is going to be a review for some of you guys. Okay, so all right, so here we go. Let's get started. So the area of squares and rectangles. So we've got some key terms that we have to know. When we talk about squares and rectangles, we have to understand what the word base means and what the word height means. So when we look here at these two shapes, I've got a square and I have a rectangle. What do you think the base means? Connor? Base is that bottom. So the base is the bottom edge. It does not work very well. So the bottom edge of a shape. So if I were to label my square and my rectangle, what would I label as the base? The bottom. So I'm going to label it with just the letter B, and it's going to be a lowercase letter b. Lowercase and capitalized letters in geometry do make a difference. So you have to put the lowercase letter b because a capital B means a completely different thing. Is that understood? Okay, I'm going to put a lowercase b in parentheses. That way I know that lowercase b means base. What's the height then? Nope. It's the side. So the height is the distance from the top to the bottom edge. And I'm going to label that with a lowercase letter h. So that means that my side is going to be a lowercase letter h. What's the top then, you guys? That is the base as well. So those are both your B's as well. Top and bottom are both your bases because the top reflects the bottom. If one side is an H, what's the other side? What's the difference between a square and a rectangle? Okay, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. What else? A square is equal on all sides. So I'm going to put these little lines here. Those lines mean that they are congruent, meaning all four sides are the same. Okay, so now let's go down to calculate it, meaning to solve. So right here, it says the formula for finding area of each shape is. So when we're talking about squares, it's area equals base times height, or area is S means side, side squared. It's the same thing. Okay, I suggest you just remember base times height because that's the same formula as your what? Rectangles. So base times height. If you remember that, it's the same for all of them. Okay, so when we look here at this shape, what shape is this? So first of all, I want you to label that. This is a square. I want us to make sure we know the difference between all of our shapes. So if it's a square, what is the length of every single side? So I could put a 6 on each side, and they are centimeters. And I want to find the area. How do I find the area of the square? Base times height. My base is what, you guys? 6. And my height is what? 6. So I'm going to write area equals B times H. Base times height. I'm going to plug in those numbers. I know that B is my 6. H is my 6. They are both 6s. That's still equal to your area. And I'm going to do area equals 6 times 6. What's 6 times 6, you guys? So my area equals 36. And then I must label it. And I have to label it properly. And you'll know how you label area, Jace? Now it's not just centimeters. It is centimeters squared. You got to put a little 2 there. So when it's area, because you're multiplying 2 numbers together, it's got to be squared because there are 2 centimeters being put together. It is squared. Questions on that? What if I ask you to find the perimeter? What do I do to find the perimeter, you guys? Well, what are my sides? So that means I'm doing 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. What is that, everyone? 6 times 3? No, but you can do 6 times 4, yes. So your perimeter is 24. 24 what? Is this one squared or not squared? So perimeter is centimeters, area is squared. And yes, you must label correctly or you are going to get it wrong. Is that understood? Jace. Always. No matter what shape we're talking about, no matter if it's a 3-dimensional shape, does not matter. If it is area, it is always squared, no matter what you're talking about, okay? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's part of it. Yep. Yep. All right, let's go to this one, guys. What shape is this? And how do I find the area of a rectangle? So I'm going to write area equals B times H. What's my base, everyone? What's my height? So I'm taking 20 times 12. This is where you guys can use your calculator. What is 20 times 12, everyone? So your answer is 240 what? Inches squared. Okay, perimeter. How do I find the perimeter of this problem? Okay, so I add up all the sides. So I see I have a 12 and I have a 20, but what are my other 2 sides that are not listed? So don't forget, you have to then add another 12 and another 20. There are multiple ways to put all that together, as long as you put it all together in one of the ways. Don't care which way you use. So everyone, combine that, write down your answer, but don't tell me out loud yet. What do you get, you guys? 64 what? $64 inches, because 20 plus 20 is 40. 12 plus 12 is 24. 40 plus 24 is 64. All right, guys, any questions on squares or rectangles? Okay, the other one that we're going to talk about today is parallelograms. So let's go to the next page. Okay, parallelograms are very, very similar to rectangles and squares. A rectangle and a square, guys, is a parallelogram. They are a specific type of parallelogram. Does that make sense? Okay, but not all parallelograms are obviously squares and rectangles. Because this shape, you can't see it very well because it's orange paper on mine. But do you see why that is not a rectangle and not a square? Okay, but it's a parallelogram. Okay, so what's the base? What did we already say? What does base mean, you guys? We wrote it on the page prior. Write it again, the bottom edge of a shape. Yes, Eva.
Why can't they be a rectangle?
Because rectangles have to have 90-degree angles. So because this one does not have a 90-degree angle, it is not classified as a rectangle. Great question. Yes, Connor. Because the square has to be equal on all four sides, and a rectangle only has to be equal on top and bottom and side to side. So it's a specific type of rectangle. Good question, guys. Okay, so my base is obviously the bottom, right, guys? And if base is the bottom, it is also the what? Okay, height. The height is the same thing as it was on squares and rectangles. What is it, everyone? Good, let's say that again. The distance from the top to the bottom base. So not edge this time, but base. So it is the distance from the top of the base to the bottom of the base. Then it says specifically the height of the parallelogram, because this is a little bit different. The height of the parallelogram is measured straight down. It must be a straight line. It cannot be a diagonal line. Is that understood, you guys?
Yeah.
Must be a straight line, so straight down from the top. So it must be straight down from the top to the bottom. Intersecting meaning they touch, they cross, the lines touch each other. The bottom at a 90-degree angle. So in order for it to be height, it must be a straight line from top to bottom. Intersecting meaning it's touching the top, it's touching the bottom at a 90-degree angle. So do you guys see that box right here? That signifies a 90-degree angle. Which means the dotted line in this case that goes from the top of the base to the bottom of the base is your height. Which means, do the two lines that are going diagonal, are those my height at all?
No.
No, those are just the outside of the shape to make it a shape. Does that make sense, guys? Do we see why those outside lines are not the height?
Yeah.
Because that is the tricky part. Okay, so if we go down to try and solve it, what's the beauty about parallelograms? What do you notice about the formula? They're the exact same. So parallelograms, squares, rectangles, same formula for all three. Base times height, base times height, base times height. Okay, so if we go down to this one right here, we're going to write down our formula. What's our formula, you guys? Area equals B times H. Write it down every time. Then you plug in the numbers. So what's my base? 18 is my base. So I plug in 18 for that B. And then I've got to plug in my height. Is my height 18 or is my height 16? So you plug in a 16 because that 16 is at a 90-degree angle from top base to bottom base. Does that make sense, guys? So are we using this 18 at all over here? So it's just extra information, right, guys? Don't let it trick you. Everyone do 18 times 16 in your calculator, please, and thank you. Don't say it out loud. Yep. Yep, that's why you can't assume that the outside is the height, because most of the time they're not the same height. Yes, McKinley. I didn't ask for the answer. Thank you. Okay, do we all have our answer written down? What is 18 times 16, you guys? 288 what? Feet squared. Questions on that? What if I asked you to now find the perimeter? Once again, guys, how do we find the perimeter of a rectangle, of a square, of a parallelogram, of any shape? What do we do? Well, what are my sides? 16 is on my side?
No, it's 18.
16 is not on the side, is it, you guys?
No,
It's measuring your height. So in this case, my sides are 18. 18. What's this side?
18.
And what's this side? Parallelograms, your height is not going to be part of the parallelogram. It is not a part of the perimeter. Does that make sense, you guys? All right. What do I get when I add all those 18s together or I multiply? What do you get? 72 what? Questions on that, you guys? All right. This one looks a little different, right, guys? But it is still a parallelogram because it is not straight up and down. It is no right angles, so therefore it is not a square, it's not a rectangle. So I want to find the area. How do I find the area? What's the formula? So write down base times height. Write down your formula. What is the base of this problem? It is 16. Because 20 goes all the way from here to here. So it's not your entire thing. So that means my base is what? Yep, that means the 4 is right here. The 4 is the dotted line. Anything we do in our notebook is subject to be on quizzes and tests, so yes. So 16 is the solid line, 4 is the dotted line. Do we see the difference between the base? So my base is 16, so what's my height? 20 is your 90-degree angle. 16 is not a straight line. Do you guys see that? 16 is not straight, therefore it's not your height. Everyone do 16 times 20, please. What's 16 times 20, everyone? What's my label? Millimeters squared. All right, now let's find the perimeter. How do I find the perimeter? So my bases are 16, so I have two 16s, top and bottom. And what are the lengths of the sides? 23 and 23, because there's always two of them. So add that together for me, please, and thank you. What'd you get, you guys? 78 what? Millimeters. Questions? Okay, let's do a couple problems on our table. So then you can get a dry erase marker out.